All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er update video. We'll talk about all that's gone on in 49er land over the last 24 hours as we come to you here on Halloween. And this video also brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. That's right, the Krug Show brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Make sure you use that promo code Krug and get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. And remember, we're doing a jersey giveaway. Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa. Use that promo code Krug, K-R-U-E-G. And on the first deposit, you're automatically entered into a drawing to win either a Purdy or a Bosa jersey. We will do that on Thanksgiving night after Niners Seahawks in the postgame. All right, let's talk a little 49ers. A lot to talk about. Kyle Shanahan, of course, spoke to the media on Monday, and just some of the stuff that came out of that I think was really interesting. Aaron Banks is out a few weeks. He's got turf toe. So when I say a few weeks, when Kyle was pinned down on it a little bit later on, he said that it happened on the second to last drive and that Banks most likely is going to miss 3 weeks. So that means the bye week and probably 2 games after that. And I would expect John Feliciano to slide in at left guard for Aaron Banks. Now, the trade deadline coming up later on today, Montez Sweat was already traded to the Chicago Bears for a second-round pick. The Commanders wanted a second. That was their ask, and teams were coming forward with third-round offers. Well, the Bears stepped up with a second-round offer, and it makes you think that even if the Niners had offered their second-round pick, and they probably did, the Bears' second-round pick is higher, and thus Montez Sweat is now a Chicago Bear. So that's a major piece off the chessboard if you're looking for edge rush help. Now, what are the Niners' needs at the deadline? Well, I would say there's a few. Defensive end is probably number 2 on the list. Corner is probably number 1. A lot of talk. They're really hot to trot for Jaylon Johnson of Chicago, who's demanded a trade. I would think you may have to trade your second-round pick for Jaylon Johnson. We'll have to see how that goes. And will the Bears, will it just be a Jaylon Johnson straight-up deal, or will there be another player involved? Supposedly Buffalo badly wants Jaylon Johnson. They obviously have corner needs, and the Niners want him as well. So we shall see who lands Jaylon Johnson between the Niners and the Bills. The one thing about that is they're both in the same part of the draft. So it's really about relationships and sweeteners if they're both offering their second-round pick. Because who's going to have the higher second-round pick, the Niners or the Bills? Well, at this point, that's pure speculation, and then it's anybody's guess. It's going to be probably real close either way. So it's probably about what else that deal looks like on the two sides as far as who wins out for Jaylon Johnson if it is down to the Niners and the Buffalo Bills. The other thing, so you got a corner, you got a defensive end. Kyle said he felt his team looked not old, but tired and slow. And so Paris Campbell is out there. Adoree Jackson is out there. Jackson runs 4.31. Campbell, very, very fast out of Ohio State. Kind of a jack of all trades kind of a guy, but guy with, low 4.3 speed and some pretty good heft. So, Campbell has not done it in the pros. Let's be honest. He's floated around to a few spots. He was good at Ohio State. Hasn't been good in the NFL. You could probably get him for nothing. The other name that I kind of think could be out there is D'Onta Foreman of the Bears. If the Niners do make a deal for Jaylon Johnson, do they throw in a little sweetener and try to get the Bears to throw in D'Onta Foreman, who's a Texas running back, who's got good speed? And if the Niners don't have confidence in J.P. Mason and Elijah Mitchell, maybe they would have more confidence in the veteran Foreman, who looked pretty good in week 7. So, we'll see. We'll see on that. That's another name to watch for. As far as what changes the 49ers can make, well, it's really difficult to say. But, I think it was really interesting listening to Richard Sherman, who basically was critical of the 49ers for playing man-to-man defense on first and second down. He says the Niner defensive line has got to get hot. Sherman went on to predict that there were going to be changes in the next week. He says he wants to see the Niners play fast, get back to the fundamentals. And he says he thinks Kyle Shanahan has had it with the lack of rush up front and talked about actually with kind of disdain all the games that the Niners do play up front, and said that they used to just pin their ears back and get the rusher or get the quarterback with their front four. So Richard Sherman was a little bit all over the place, but the real compelling statement there was his assertion that there's going to be changes next week. Now we'll get into what those changes potentially can be, but I thought that was an interesting note that's come down. As far as injuries, Dre Greenlaw's got a shoulder sprain and he's battling an ankle. Shanahan said that Greenlaw badly needs the time off. He badly needs the break. That's clear as day, right? I mean, you're watching a great player out there slowed down just simply by injuries. As far as Purdy's head, he said that Brock's not feeling anything extra, even though he bumped his head at the end of the game against the Bengals on the turf. He said that Brock is totally fine with the as far as concussions at this point. One of the things that clearly has hurt the 49ers. He was asked about it during the presser. What is the issue on defense? And the media is kind of pressing Kyle. What is the issue? Is it the lack of a pass rush? Is it the poor coverage? Is it the missed tackles? And, he said basically all of it. All of it. All of it alarmed me the most. He said, what was the most alarming? All of it alarmed me the most. The lack of pass rush, the soft coverage, and the missed tackles. So he said they were sloppy in their tackling against Cleveland with penalties and against the run. He said they struggled with a real hot veteran quarterback in Minnesota, that obviously being Kirk Cousins. And then Kyle basically said his team looks slow and tired. And I agree. I mean, this is why I like Kyle Shanahan, because he cuts to the chase and he speaks the truth. They do. They look slow and they look tired. They look totally gassed. I said it first quarter of the Bengal game. They look totally gassed. For whatever reason, the Niners have expended a lot of energy, and they just look like they're physically tired. Now, is it because they're featuring, they're playing Greenlaw and Warner a ton. They're playing McCaffrey a ton. They're not using their bench. Is that part of why they look slow and tired? I don't know. Danny Gray has not been able to hit the field, so they don't have that vertical threat wide receiver, which is why, a guy like Paris Campbell might make some sense for the 49ers just simply because he's fast. A guy like Deontay Foreman might make some sense for the 49ers because he's got some breakaway speed even at that size. So, but I agree with Shanahan's assertion and assessment and evaluation. They look slow on offense. They look like it takes them 10, 12 play drives to score. They don't have that explosiveness. They look slow on the corner. Isaiah Oliver looks slow. Mooney Ward looks slow. They need more speed. I mean, do they need Jaylon Johnson? Do they need Odori Jackson? Guys, being totally honest, they need both. They need both those guys. Do they need Paris Campbell? Yeah, they do. So they look slow and they look tired, and I agree with Kyle 100% on that. Then Grant Cohn asked the question, would you consider making a change at quarterback during the bye week? And Kyle just I wasn't in the room, so I didn't see it. And unfortunately, before I streamed with Grant yesterday, I hadn't heard it. Otherwise, we would have discussed that at length, and that's shame on me because I was doing stuff during that presser. But, Kyle said no, just one word, no. Will you consider making a change at quarterback and benching Brock Purdy during the bye week? No. Why? Because no one changes their quarterback for no reason. That was the answer. I mean, Grant's stuff just got tossed into like the 14th row, and he was smiling about it and laughing about it yesterday, but I'm not sure exactly why. Basically, Kyle isolated that question and made it seem like it was idiocy, like it was ridiculous. Like, dude, what are you talking about? No, we're not changing our quarterback. No, our second quarterback and our third quarterback aren't better than Brock Purdy. That to me, and of course the national media is picking up on it today with Chris Sims and others, but that was the bombshell in the presser. I didn't get that sense when I talked to Grant yesterday that it was that kind of awkward. But yeah, will you consider making a change at quarterback, Kyle, during your bye week? No. Why? Because no one changes their quarterback for no reason. So whatever Grant's seeing, Kyle ain't seeing. And they're rolling with Brock going forward, which makes all the sense in the world because Brock Purdy's their best quarterback. And it's funny that what I find really funny about this is that the same people And I love Grant. He's great. He's treated me great. But I love the same people who were scoffing crazily at the notion that Sam Darnold was ahead of Trey Lance on the depth chart this summer. Now, after a couple of bad fourth quarters for Brock Purdy, are demanding Sam Darnold to start. And I mean, it's like, what are we doing here, guys? So he wasn't good enough to be in front of Trey Lance this summer in training camp, but now he's good enough to replace a quarterback who started super hot and has now hit a 2-game patch where he's thrown some picks and they've lost close games. Really? That's where we're at? Just kind of shows how quickly things change in Ninerland. As far as Trent Williams, his ankle, Shanahan said hopefully he'll be ready after the bye for Jacksonville. And then Eric Branch asked a question that Kyle didn't want any part of. He's like, was Purdy checked for a concussion? And he said, I didn't ask. And then he said, well, if you had seen the his head hit the turf, would you have taken him out of the game? And here's where, and this is an NFL point of interest. The NFL doesn't want coaches, general managers, or team personnel speaking on behalf of doctors. They don't want it. They don't want the coaches to speculate about concussions or really any injury. If you want to see a consistent theme in the 49er pressers, whether it be Shanahan, Lynch, Chris Forster, Steve Wilks, just ask specifics about a player injury and watch them just pull back aggressively. Hey, well, no, we can't comment on that. This is a league message. Stop speaking publicly on concussions. Stop speaking publicly on player injuries. So Shanahan just, hit the eject button. When he was Purdy checked for a concussion, he said, I didn't ask. Then he was asked, hey, if you had seen him, his head hit the turf, would you have pulled him out? And he's like, well, that's a pretty hypothetical question. And then he basically went on to say, hey, look, if there's any player that's hurt, we want to get him out of the game, and not speaking specifically because they don't want to speak in specifics, have coaches and general managers and assistant coaches speak on the record for the media specifically about injuries, most specifically concussions. So that conversation was going absolutely nowhere. As far as trades, Shanahan was asked yesterday about trades. He says John Lynch has been working on this for a month, and then he went on to say there's not a lot of options out there. So, and that's really true. 49ers need, cornerback help, defensive line help, maybe some speed at wide receiver. They're not going to get any O-line help, at least nothing significant, you would think. And there are not a lot of options. I mean, let's talk about it. They had, corner. You got Patrick Surtain. Is he available? Do you want to trade your number one? There's Kenny Moore out of Indy. Is he available? Jaylon Johnson. There's only one Jaylon Johnson. Sean Murphy Bunting, Adoree Jackson. Some people don't even think Adoree Jackson's all that good. He's fast, but he hasn't had a great year. So that's not a lot of options right there to satisfy every single team in the league that needs a corner. And there's even probably less options at defensive end. And it doesn't sound like the Brian Burnses and the Danielle Hunters of the world are going to be moving. And then Montez Sweat just went. So is Chase Young going to go next, or are they going to keep one of those guys and Chase is the guy they're going to keep? So there's not a lot of options. Or do you look at an Arden Key? Do you look at some lesser options? Josh Uche from the Patriots wouldn't be bad. But there's not a lot of options at corner, at defensive end, really at any spot. So he was, and also, Kyle, unlike, Farhan Zaidi on the Giants side, Shanahan and Lynch understand sales. And that is you underpromise and you overdeliver. You don't get the fans hot and bothered and deliver nothing. So that's the right thing to say. Downplay it. John's been working on it. We're making calls. We're making efforts. There's not a lot of options out there. We'll see. That's what you say. And that's what they've said coming into today. And, of course, the deadline is later today. Maybe the biggest story coming out of the presser was when Jake Hutchinson, our good buddy from KMBR.com, asked Shanahan about Steve Wilks. And if, he would discuss with Wilks the possibility of Wilks leaving the booth where he watches the games right now and coming onto the field. And Shanahan says, hey, if he thinks it will help him, then he's all for it, and that the two of them will discuss it this week. And that was the quote. He says that's something we will discuss this week, just the two of us. So that sounds like Jake kind of hit on something that may actually be happening. Now, Tim Ryan, the radio color analyst, has basically called for Wilks to leave the booth and hit the sidelines. And I think there's some disconnect communication-wise between the defensive players and the coordinator, and that might be why, the impetus for such a change. But ultimately, it comes down to how comfortable is Wilks on the sideline versus the booth. We've seen coordinators in the booth. Steve Wilks isn't the first guy to be in the booth. Oftentimes, guys who look from the back to the front like to see the coverage and want to be that bird's eye view. I say, Steve, hold your guns and watch the game where you feel you're best watching the game. If Steve feels he's got a better view of it on the sideline, then be on the sideline. If Steve feels he's got a better view of what's going on up top, then be up top. You can't make suggestions to guys that are worth a damn if you don't have a grasp on what you're seeing. So your vantage point is important. And so if Steve feels his best vantage point is to be in the box with the bird's eye view, then Steve, stay in the box. That would be my message. Would I like him to have a direct communication with his players on the sidelines like D'Amico had, like Saleh had? Sure. But really, it's all about making the best suggestions and diagnosing the problems correctly. And if Steve can diagnose better from the vantage point that he's comfortable with, then stay with it. And who cares what people are saying? But that's interesting, and that's a story to follow this week. As far as what's going to happen this week with the players, Shanahan said the players are coming in today for a bunch of workouts and kind of a big work day. Then they'll be off until Monday. He said the injured guys are down in Santa Clara rehabbing all week. So Kyle and the coaches, according to Kyle, we're going to go hard yesterday and today, Monday and Tuesday, and then they will go away and then check back in with each other on Sunday. These guys are all workaholics, so they're all going to be working from home. I mean, that's the reality, and the players come back in the building on Monday. So that's where we're at. That's where we're at as far as the 49er update for on this Tuesday morning. The trade deadline's coming up in a few hours. If the Niners do something of significance, we'll probably go live. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out in Emeryville, in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And check that link in the description for Mojo Fantasy. Use the promo code Krug and get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. And everybody who does automatically gets into a drawing for a Purdy or a Bosa jersey on Thanksgiving night. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show, which is growing rapidly on YouTube.